Welcome CCIM and Ireland. We're so glad y'all are here today for this special panel discussion and also our great crawfish bowl here at the port. My name is Norman Morris and I'm CEO of Louisiana Realtors, and we're honored and thrilled to be here with the who's who in commercial real estate in Louisiana. We definitely want to thank the Port of New Orleans and Jacob Chris for allowing us the opportunity to use this great facility. I mean, how great is it to have one of the best natural resources running through our backyard here in New Orleans and all the way up through Baton Rouge and the state of Louisiana, the Mississippi River. So I'm looking forward to seeing this place itself because I've never been down here, but here it's just a great facility. So thank Jacob for allowing us to use this facility. Our sponsors today are many, and we thank them, the Nomar CID, and I think Cameron Lombardo is here. Would you stand? Thank you, Cameron. Corporate Realty. Anyone hear from them? Ladder and Bloom Property Management. I know we have many of them here today. And NEI Ladder and Bloom. That's saying so. And the law offices of Shear, Garner, Cahill, Victor, Klein, and Hilbert. It's Elwood Cahill. Is anyone from their firm here? So thank you for all of our sponsors today. We're thrilled at Louisiana Realtors to be able to provide the administrative support for both the state IRM chapter and the state CCIM chapter here in Louisiana. And it's been a great partnership to work with both groups and have them a part of what we do, not only legislatively, but in other ways, and to assist y'all in the things that you need to do to make your professions and your designation and your professions better for you and what you do day to day. So I'd like to introduce Scott Graff, the 2021 CCIM state president. Scott,
stand up.
Joe Peppalato Jr., who is the 2021 Ireland state president. Is Joe here? He's supposed to be. I'm not seeing Joe. And Debbie Prejean, who is the 2021 Ireland regional vice president. Is Debbie here? I haven't seen her either. Louisiana has been very fortunate over its career to have some great leaders in the commercial sector, not only at the state level, but at the national level. And we've been fortunate to have three, and I'll say it again, three national CCIM presidents. And those are Barry Spicer. Is Barry here? I think there he is. Barry Spicer. Richard Chu. And Carl Landry. We're also grateful today to have our wonderful Louisiana Realtors State President from the Monroe, West Monroe area with us today, Mark Uchley. And we have two recent past state presidents in strictly commercial real estate, and one holds a CCIM designee and the other one an RLI designee, and that's Matt Ritchie and Beth Christine. I'm truly excited today because before we start our panel discussion, we are extremely honored to have not only one, but two current national presidents of both the CCIM national and of the IRM national president is with us today. Both of them are here. And I'll start next to me on my left, who's been a great friend of our state, great friend of mine and many of you out there, the 2021 IRM national president, Chip Watts from Birmingham, Alabama. Next to Chip, we're so glad to have with us today the 2021 CCIM National President, also from Birmingham, Alabama, and he earned his CCIM in 2006, and that is Mr. Tim Blair. I'm going to ask Chip and Tim to just say a couple words, and just so fortunate to have you with us today.
And my time with the state runs deep. My mother-in-law was from Louisiana. We've got a lot of friends here, and it's been nice to be able to come back. I just want to say that after this pandemic, I'm very happy to be back out traveling. Y'all are the first chapter event I've been to this year. So I'm excited to be here. Glad to be back on the road. IRM has been a partner with all of its members over the last 18 months through this pandemic. We've provided a lot of resources to our members. We hope that you've been able to benefit from those resources and utilize them yourself. Our education products have been strong. We've seen a lot of people come into our business over the last year. All I can say is property management is going strong. Together we thrive as we go through this pandemic, and I really appreciate everyone here that's an IRA member, so thank you for being here.
Tim?
Hey, my name is Tim Lamb. I'm from Birmingham. Chip and I's office is literally like a block and a half apart. Small world. It is just great to be here. I think we probably all feel that deep down. It's just great to get back out there. We are at the core in a service-based business. We make a living through helping other people, whether it's through property management and helping the experience of occupying an office space or a building. From the brokerage side, we are in the business of helping people find space. We're in the help, and I think it all the time, you say you give some young gun, okay, it's just a 1,500-foot lease in a small retail center. Well, I guarantee you to that tenant, it is everything. It is their life. It is where their kids are going to grow up in the back room and do homework while they stock the shelves during the day. We get to help people. And when we're good at it, we can help people and make a pretty good living at it. And I really do. I count every day. I feel blessed that I wandered into this industry because it just has so much going for it. CCIM, as y'all know, goodness gracious, you guys have the 3 presidents here. I mean, I'm the first from Alabama, so we may never catch up. That's true for a lot of things from Alabama. But CCIM is just such a great education for me and for everybody. I cannot think of a single reason in the world why somebody getting into our industry who's going to be involved on the brokerage side does not get their CCIM degree designation. It just is. I call it the Cliff Notes. It is just kind of the how-to analyze real estate, whether you're doing your brokerage or from ownership or whatever. CCIM has just been everything to me, and I know that y'all have such a strong chapter here, and y'all continue to do a great job of bringing people on board with that. But thank you so much. I cannot tell you how good it is to actually physically see y'all and be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Chip and Tim. Now we'll get on to what you want to hear, and that's the information about different market areas around the state, and then we're going to flow from that into some specific questions for our panel. So this time I'd like to introduce our panelists that we have today. We do have a distinguished group. On my far end, representing the Acadiana area, is David Gleason, who is a past Louisiana CCIM president, state president, and is broker of the Gleason Group. So let's give David a round of applause. Representing the greater Baton Rouge area, who is CCIM president-elect this year, and is Virginia Outlier Bloom, and that's Evan Straub. And representing the greater New Orleans area, with Relapse Commercial, and as you know, a past national president, does a great job of teaching CCIM and other courses around the country and in our state, and that's Richard Jude. And joining us with the video today, Arthur Ryerson from the Northwest Louisiana part of the state, definitely wanted to be with us today. But he had a trip that he's been trying to plan over and over again. He's had a chance to finally work out for him where he can go on this trip. So he's going to be take a little version for you today. And before we go into our panelists that are here today, let's watch a video that Archer has pre-recorded for us to hear about Northwest Louisiana and Shreveport, Bossier, and greater area.
Joining us via Zoom for our first in-person event of the year. Our president and the director of brokerage.
Can y'all hear?
We'll be focusing mainly on the Northwest region of the state. If you would please give us a little background on yourself and your brokerage.
Sure, thanks, Matt. And I'm sorry I can't be there joining you guys at the conference. Vintage Realty Company is headquartered in Shreveport, Louisiana, that's northwest corner of the state. We've got about 16 broking leasing agents here, pretty good property management department as well, and mainly focus on North Louisiana. Also do some brokerage in East Texas, Southwest Arkansas, and a little bit of Mississippi. So anyway, that's a little bit. I've been here at Vintage since 2004. So 16 years, 17 years, and I've been the director of the department for the last 3 years. So again, thanks for having me, and sorry I couldn't be there to join you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time out to doing this. Now let's take a look back to 2020 for a moment. I'm gonna pepper you with a couple of questions and, just do your best to answer them as you can. How did 2020 impact your brokerage in the market?
I think here in Shreveport and North Louisiana, like everywhere, we pretty much we're shut down. I guess it was March and April of last year. Everything just kind of came to a standstill, like it did, across the United States and really across the world. And that pushed a lot of deals back. Didn't necessarily kill a lot of deals. I think that the second and third quarter last year were pretty slow. Most of our time, our agents' time spent in the second, third quarter, we're mainly doing, lease workouts for the office of retail tenants, more retail probably than office. I looked back at our numbers last week just to see kind of how we fared in comparison to 2019 and years past. And really our sales activity, the numbers were not as down as I thought they would be. We were a little bit down sales volume wise on our 5-year average, but we were above our 10-year average. So I thought that was impressive. The number of deals, brokerage deals, was down slightly, but not what I anticipated. Leasing activity was down. I think our final numbers on new lease deals were down, I think 8% on our 5-year average, and about 16% on our 10-year average for new lease deals. So it was a struggle, but after looking at year-end numbers, it didn't impact us as much as I thought it would.
That's fantastic to hear. What would your biggest struggle or hurdle you encountered last year been?
More than anything, I don't know if the mechanics of the deal changed, but I think it was the coordination of the deal. Whether you're dealing with surveyors, lenders, appraisers, it was just lining up all those folks to do what they do during the due diligence. And for instance, you may be waiting on a surveyor that was exposed to COVID or his wife had COVID and had set him back 2 weeks, which delayed the title work. I think it was just it impacted deals, making them tougher to do. I guess just coordinating the things that usually wouldn't be hard to coordinate. That was the biggest struggle, I think, for us.
Okay. What type of properties were selling and what type of properties did you see sitting throughout your brokerage?
So our industrial activity continues to be good up here, and kind of what drives that is the oil and gas service sector and distribution to some degree. Those properties fared well and continue today to do that. Obviously, retail was impacted probably the most, followed by office. Our office market's been soft here for a long time, for at least last 5 years, and so that really hurt it even more here. And I would say multifamily continue to do well. So industrial multifamily continue to do well. For office and retail, we're pretty slow.
Yeah. So that's 2020. Now let's look forward where we are now and look at 2021. And how was the first quarter for y'all in your area?
First quarter was good. I think that deal flow picked up fourth quarter last year and first quarter this year. Deal flow and just activity in general, just folks going out. I think that everybody is term shy in our market. Where we used to be able to get 5, 7, 10-year leases out of some tenants. I mean, we're struggling to get 3 or 4 years out of some folks, and so that has definitely impacted the leasing activity up here. Just like I said, the tenants are all term shy. But activity is good, and I think lower interest rates are driving deals, especially, there's some attractive deals for under occupancy, so we're seeing some new construction. But I will say that, rising material prices, especially lumber and steel, have put some deals on hold that were going to be built. So the rising construction prices, the rising material prices, and kind of material backlog, I think is going to have an impact on some big projects.
Okay. What changes to your business do you anticipate to exist in the long term?
Well, I think that we've all learned to do things like this. I never done a Zoom call before, so obviously, it's gonna, the way we work, and more remote working, virtual tours, Zoom calls, stuff like this. I'm not necessarily a fan of those things, but I think that that's kind of what we're going to be doing more of probably. We have clients now that usually fly to kind of look at properties, that we're doing a whole lot more virtual tours for those folks before they spend money to fly to town. And so I think that will change. The debate is out there on office space and office footprint and whether they're going to need the footprint that they had before the pandemic. I know that there's a school of thought out there that eventually will come back to where it was because of lack of culture and collaboration within the office. But at the same time, we're seeing tenants and talk about renewals, and we're having a hard time getting anybody to expand and trying to get the same footprint.
Okay. Last question. Where do you see this year ending compared to last year?
I think it'll be better. Again, I think something I didn't hit on earlier that I think is important. I think that COVID obviously had a humongous impact on all of our businesses, but I think that coupled with the fact that it's an election year and it was such a polarizing election year, and I think that had a lot to do with what we saw last year. So I'm hoping that now there's stability in the political, I don't know, stability, I don't know what you call it. The election's over with, that maybe that will help ease some of the concerns going forward with their future plans. So let's hope that happens.
Yeah, that's very true. Arthur, we appreciate your insight and hope to see you in person soon. That concludes our segment on Northwest Louisiana. Back to you, Norm.
Thank you.
What I'll start is, I'll just go to the end down here, and I'll start with David Gleason and just ask him to give an overview of his market area over to Acadiana and see what they're up to in the commercial sector. David?
Awesome. I didn't even start with me. And it's funny because, listening to Archer talk about what's happening in his market is very relatable as far as what's going on in our market. But so just tell you a little bit about me. I'm David Gleason. I'm the broker of the Gleason Group. We have about 17 agents. I'm a graduate of Ladder and Bloom. Supposed to be fun. Anyways, I've kind of been out of mode for the last 3 years. So we hit the 2-year mark running, excited, and then actually stepped out and bought a building. We were under contract, ready to close in April, and COVID hit. So it was a very uneasy time. It was like, we didn't have a choice. I mean, we had to move forward and buy the building. We were through with our due diligence. We were waiting to close. And so we did. We bought the building and hunkered down and kind of rode the storm. I don't know how else to put it, but in our market, we were heavy on oil and gas up until last year. Oil prices dropped. Archie mentioned the election. We saw that, a lot of activity. Everybody was sitting on their hands. Nobody was doing anything because they didn't know what to expect with what the administration was going to be in place. So you had oil and gas, you had the election, you had all these other factors, COVID obviously, that created this uncertainty. And so our commercial market got really, really stagnant. Now, at the same time, our market has done a really good job of diversifying, which is exciting because we've been so dependent on oil and gas for so long. Our economic development groups are doing a fantastic job of bringing other industries into Lafayette. Our medical industry has been doing really, really good. In fact, companies like LHC and a few others have been expanding. LHC had a 75,000 square foot building that they bought from AT&T, and they built another 75,000 square foot building right beside it. In fact, that building should be done in the next 6 months to a year. So they doubled the size of their office space, which is kind of unheard of. Our office market has been really soft in the Lafayette area because all these oil and gas companies moved out. They took their operations back to Houston. So we had an abundance of office space and still have more office space than we like to see. So office was really slow. Retail, obviously, retailers were trying to figure out how they were going to pay their bills because no one was getting out because of COVID. So retail was certainly slow and there was no movement. So what I was getting at is our market has done a really good job of diversifying. So our residential market was booming last year, believe it or not. In fact, I pulled some data from Bill Bache's report that showed that, year over year, we had a 10% increase in residential last year. In fact, when everybody was stuck at home, we still had an increase in the residential market. In fact, December, the year over year was 42%, almost 43%. So we sold a lot of residential units. And I know y'all aren't here to hear about residential, but it's important because that's all that was happening in our market last year. In fact, a lot of land sales happened, large tract land sales happened because developers needed land to provide subdivisions. We're kind of in a little, I don't know how the rest of the Louisiana is, but we're kind of in a little bidding war in Lafayette. And if there's a house for sale, you're going to have 3 or 4 offers on it. You're going to have to put an addendum in there that says that if somebody beats your offer, that your offer goes up. And we're kind of in that world right now in Lafayette. And it's amazing because the houses are flying off the market. As far as, what we did to adapt, we convinced our owners to be proactive and to work with their tenants. In fact, I'm an investor as well. And so we had a lot of our tenants call us and say, hey, what are you going to do to help? And so we reached out to our bankers and said, hey, what can you do to help? So all of us working together, we were able to give some relief to our tenants and keep them in place, which I thought was important. Sorry, I thought that was me first. We also, convinced people to liquidate. So we had a lot of oil and gas companies that had empty facilities, and there was no real horizon that could be seen. So we convinced them, look, drop your price and move the building rather than sit on an empty building for an indefinite period of time. So that was kind of another strategy that we took. One of the other things that's been a positive aspect in our market is in the past, oil and gas companies utilized our industrial buildings, and they were selling oil at $100 a barrel. So they didn't care what the lease rate or what the purchase price was. They were paying it because they just needed a facility to work out of. The last several years have changed that, and we're now able to put other types of businesses in our industrial buildings. So we're now seeing, like a gymnastics instruction company going in. We had a forensics company going to an industrial building. So all these different uses are now able to get out and shop and look at the industrial buildings that we have. So we've been able to, starting in December, January, we've kind of gotten busy again, moving some of these industrial properties. What types of properties are selling? I made myself some notes, so I did come prepared. I just went over that, I'm sorry. How's the first quarter been for you and your agents? We saw absolute change after this election that he mentioned. December, January, our phones started ringing again. So I've been extremely busy, and our team has been extremely busy. They probably, the majority of our agents are commercial agents, and they probably did about 50% of what they would normally do in 2020. I was lucky because I was working some big deals that I'd had the year before that got held up and actually closed. I couldn't believe it. One was a big 50,000 square foot office deal, but it closed in 2020. So I actually did better than I did the year before that. And as a company, we ended up exceeding our numbers from the year prior. So it ended up being okay, which that's all we could have hoped for. But we're seeing a big change in activity. We're all getting busier. Phones are ringing. Where do we see this year compared to last year? Obviously, it's going to be much better. Going back to the diversity that I spoke of, the new companies coming in. We actually have some manufacturing that's coming to the Broussard area. I got a calendar invite for middle of May to go. They're finally going to announce this. I can't really say because I'd get in trouble, but 500,000 square foot manufacturing facility that's also utilizing some of the other industrial in the area for some of their ancillary services. So a lot of exciting things happening in Lafayette. I'd like to sit here. Richard and I were talking earlier. I'd like to sit here and tell you it's horrible. Don't come to Lafayette because there's nothing going on, but I can't lie to you. So what changes to your business do you anticipate to exist long-term? We won't be able to shake hands anymore. We'll have to fist bump. I think that's long-term. No, I'm just kidding. But clients have a lot more inventory to look at now. So we're back to that era where we got to go ride around and look at a lot of properties. We haven't had that in a long time in my market. In fact, I got one client that's been leasing and they're trying to purchase a building, and I swear we've looked at 20 buildings now and we still haven't made a decision. So we're back into a market where we've got a little bit more inventory. And let me say, Lafayette has always been a very unique environment in terms of inventory, because where your typical vacancy or available buildings is probably about 10 to 15%. We've always stayed in the 7 to 8% on inventory. So now we're in a healthy environment where we have more inventory to show. So that's kind of a good problem to have. We are seeing, as he mentioned, that we're not getting long-term commitments from tenants. Everything is very short-term because people don't understand or know what's going to happen in the future. As far as what's the biggest struggle or hurdle you encountered over the last year, just getting people to do business last year was really hard, as he mentioned. They all were either away at the beach or at their vacation home, quarantined, or they just, getting people to go out and do a survey or an appraisal was difficult. So I'll repeat what he said. That was the same thing that was happening in our market. What area did you see grow the most? Just going back to the statement that I made, that our industrial sector is growing because we're having other users come in and occupy those oil and gas buildings.
Great report, David. Richard, I know you've got a big area here with not only Greater New Orleans and North Shore, but also Jefferson Parish. So I'd love to hear about what's going on down here.
Yeah, unlike David, I didn't prepare for this, so you have to ask me all those questions to answer. I too am a graduate of the Louder Bloom Institute. Evan, come along. Also, the RE/MAX research department was busy at work with corporate realty's office report, Max Kirby's industrial report, and Sterling's retail report. So thank you. I could really think I could say ditto to what Archer said up there. I don't know if most people agree as he was talking, but just parsing it out by maybe discipline. I do mostly office and industrial, so I'm the most deficient at retail. But I think what's different maybe from the other parts of the state is we're so tourist dependent, and we just got off obviously with COVID and just the downtown markets are suffering. I have stuff in the French Quarter that we've never had a problem renting, and it's idle, and we're giving. Well, you just keep the lights on. You pay the rent. Pay the light bill, pay the whatever else, and really discounted to nothing kind of rents. And I think that also spills over into the CBD for sure, and then spills over even further into the warehouse district and even up Magazine Street. So I think I see some nodding heads, and I think just retail was clearly the worst sector. At the same time, my office is actually in Metairie, and I found retail anecdotally, like there was some time towards the end of the summer, I was like, gosh, it's like Black Friday already in terms of the retail activity that was out in Jefferson Parish. And I think just from a sub-market of our markets, the North Shore has probably done the best. So I do have stats I've stolen. Carly gave me more national statistics, which I thought was kind of interesting, parsing out retail occupancy starting at 93%, going down to 90.7%, so 2-3%, and malls going from 93 to 88%. So, I think you can see the hit in terms of occupancies and retail. And I know I own some retail stuff, and we were giving more concessions away, not just COVID worthy stuff, but just concessions in general that we normally didn't do. Hey, is anybody seeing a trend that why these retailers all of a sudden want to go from triple net rents to modified gross rents? Are you all seeing that? Are you being answered that? I'm serious. Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe somebody smart like Richard can tell me why. But and then one of the interesting stats Carly said to me was store openings since August of last year, 1,200 store closings, 4,800. So I don't know if that's a 4 to 1, 5 to 1 sort of ratio of closings to openings, but that's pretty scary. Like David said, our industrial market, has held its own. Gerard Henry and his normally quippy, snippy, mean little self gave me some stats, but 4 million square feet, he says, was absorbed, raising the occupancy rate to 3%. I have been looking for 50,000 feet of warehouse on the western side of town. It is virtually non-existent. Trying to buy warehouse space is virtually non-existent. I don't know if anybody else is seeing this too. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've had more banks offering really cheap rates for owner-occupied stuff. So I think that does correlate to industrial and perhaps also into the office market, where you can't hardly find an office building to buy in Jefferson Parish. And then Bruce Ossman, by the way, Bruce, you didn't show up late, but I'm glad you're here, I guess. I don't want to call you out on that, but just thanks. I know your time, you're very valuable, very important to us, so thanks for being here. CBD office ranks, Bruce, is this stuff any good? 85% going down to 84% in the CBD. Metairie looks like it took a little bit more of a hit, 89 to 86%. That's probably because Bruce leases 3 million, what is it, 1.5 million square feet out there in Metairie. But I do think overall in the office market, Cress Gardner, one of our more refined members, is here today. Thank you, Cress, for being on time, by the way. The office market, I think these guys will tell you the same thing. He said shorter terms, more concessions. I will say that we had Peter Barnett, who heads all of PwC's real estate teaching class a couple of weeks ago. So he has some really interesting insight from the national perspective. And I'll just say that, jury's still out in terms of what's going to happen with office. And he just kind of said if he was to put it into a crystal ball, we'll probably see overall a 10%-ish to maybe 20% reduction in the size of offices going forward. And what's the balance of that? I think we've proven that working from home does work. A/B shifts do work. I think you're going to be hard pressed to get people to work 5 days a week. In a year, 2 years, I don't know. Remains to be seen. If you relate it to Chicago, our staffs for our institutes are in Chicago in a completely different mentality than, I'll say, our city around here and some other cities where, hey, if you had to get on a train and a bus in that freezing cold weather to downtown Chicago, you'd probably be going, yeah, I'm going to stay at home too. So I think for the big city mentalities, that's true. So Norman, I don't have these questions that David answered, but if you want to read them later, I don't know if you want to go down and check it out.
Let's go ahead and situate up to Mike. Just kind of talk about what was the biggest struggle for you and your agents, and you as a broker, to kind of mentoring and visiting with your agents about how to cope with last year, and what did y'all deal with the most frustration though with COVID?
Agents are like children. Carl, you want to answer that?
Okay, I changed a lot.
Now, hey, look, it's tough. And look, I feel for the people who are more specialized in retail and more geographically in the hard hit areas. And that's, who would have known, right, a year and a half ago, oh, okay. I mean, the industry was hot, and if you're doing retail in that part of the world, you look like a genius 15 months ago, and you didn't look so much like a genius maybe 9 months ago. Industrial's just been the best segment. So I mean, look, it was tough, and I don't think anybody's bragging up here about how bad the company took a hit. I'd say we were some aggregate, we were probably down 30%. There's a lot of lag time in our deals, as everybody knows. And I'm jumping ahead on a question, but I mean, right now we're busier, I think, certainly than we have been through COVID, but I think as busy as we were before COVID. So, when's that lag time? When are you going to see that commission hit? Is that 4 or 6 months from now? So it'll take a while to get back, but it was tough.
Do you fall in that same category about the future of office spaces, and particularly the class last week on 10%, with everything going on, work weeks may be changing, different ways that people work? Do you fall in that same category?
Not, you mean my office or?
Just generally, your perception.
Oh, my perception as a broker is, I would say, yeah, I mean, I think people are trying to keep their flexibility. I don't know that they know necessarily, they don't have a 10-year horizon, right? I mean, they got a 3-year horizon, maybe a 5-year horizon. I think people right now, if they are, I have a couple of tenants that maybe 10,000 feet. I'm working probably 3 different deals that are towards the end of the year. They're all trying to figure out how do they shrink their footprint and how do they adjust for them. But the problem is, if you have an A/B work shift, isn't that going to create more of an issue for the person that's going to be there looking the phone handle that day, and then the next touches it the next day? I mean, it's probably going to create more if they're sharing that same desk, right? And I joked last year on the forecast, I said the days of 10 people at a ping pong table, with 2 screens, I think that's gone too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of that sizing of the space, because I think everyone wants to shrink it, but how do you shrink it is not an easy answer.
And lastly, on the property management side, I know on the residential side, we've talked to a lot of people statewide, and a lot of the tenants have paid. They've worked with them. There's a few that haven't, but it's not as large as we thought we would see. On the commercial side, what have you seen in terms of tenants and their ability as companies to pay or not pay? And what have you done to maybe get together with your bankers and yourself and them to relieve those issues?
Yeah, I think David said some of it, Archer said some of it. I think the banks were working with you. I also know that's because the FDIC told them they could, and they were given special exemptions to do workouts with them. So that was certainly part of it. But from a property management standpoint, in the depths of the depths, everybody, I'm not either, hey, can you help me not pay rent? And I think most landlords favorably said, okay, take 2 months off, I'll add 4 in the back end or some combination of that. And I was appalled, actually, at a couple of them, especially the bigger ones. I don't want to name them, but the bigger tenants that sent us letters that said, we're not paying you. And, I was shocked at that. And I think that came back to bite them in, a little later. So, and look, just from a management standpoint, working through, I mean, we have a management company. We manage probably, 150, 200 tenants and 30, 40 properties. So, but it was retail related specifically. I mean, we didn't have any office or industrial tenants not pay. It was retail.
We had several industrial tenants where we actually got a longer term on the back end by giving them a few months of leeway during the COVID. So we had something that actually worked out really, really good.
Before I get to Evan, just get y'all's opinion, we'll get Evan to answer this when he goes through his list of questions. The mall issue around the country. You're seeing Amazon and the world come in. I know that really it's done some buying and open up some facilities all around the country. Where do you see and how do you see those mall properties restructuring or relooking in the future, those ones that are closing down? Have you thought about that or heard any national information on where that may go?
You had the case study up there, right?
Yeah, Evan, you may want to take that one as well.
Yeah, the one about Rouge is unique because Cortana was dark. I mean, it was for the most part entirely vacant. And I think that's the best case scenario, right? I don't think you see that happen. I think that's going to prove to be kind of the anomaly. I think those properties are very hard to convert. I don't think they convert well, and even with Cortana, it's a complete redevelopment. I mean, they're not using any of the existing structure. If anything, if I had to guess, the price was adjusted to account for the cost of demolition. on site. So, yeah, that's a great question. I don't know what's going to happen to mall properties. I mean, I don't think they convert well to distribution. Maybe some sort of urban conversion where there's, a mixture of residential, office, and retail, possibly. But I mean, look, I can speak, I'm 38, married, have 4 children. The idea of going to the mall is just foreign to me. I mean, my wife, like, I couldn't imagine her backing up, kids to go to the mall, like, get on the Amazon app, what do we need? It's at our front door in 48 hours. So, I know over the years it's been talked about the experience of retail, and that's what's going to keep people coming back. But, like, I will gladly forego that experience right now, right? For convenience. So, I don't have a good answer for what's going to happen with malls, but I do think you're going to see increasing vacancy, and they're just not going to be asset types of choice, for institutional capital.
Why don't you, David, go ahead and then we'll get Evan to go through the back room.
Yeah, so our Sears location has been dark for quite some time, and they tried to retrofit that with Amazon, and as most of you probably know, Amazon's building on I-49 in between Lafayette and Alexandria, so they couldn't make it work. So I agree with you on the whole distribution aspect. We've had a lot of issues at our mall lately during this pandemic situation. And so we just hired the girl that does all the leasing to be one of our agents. So we're going to bring her over into the commercial world. But I guess I could say that. Check with my wife on the front row. But it has become a very challenging scenario in the mall. And I'm with Evan. I'm not 38, but 39. But I haven't been to a mall. So that's a great question. What's going to happen to those trucks?
So, well, this policy, states, and I know Louisiana looking at all the revenue that's been laid on the table, that they're not collecting from online sales as well. So it'll be interesting to see those states clamp down and start collecting that tax. Is it going to shift again? Come on, because people are saving a lot of money not having to pay that tax. So it's interesting dynamics on all that. And why don't you give us a background on Baton Rouge and what's happening there, and maybe go through some of the questions and then fill us in on what's happening in that great area.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Evan Scroggs. I'm a commercial real estate agent with NAL. I'm actually filling in. We had another broker from Baton Rouge who was supposed to, give more of a commentary on the Baton Rouge market and kind of what it's like to manage an office there and what he's seeing. But he wasn't able to attend. But what I'm seeing, or what I've seen, how COVID kind of impacted initially. The second quarter was just a wash. Any deal that was kind of in process immediately went on hold. And so it got really slow for that second quarter, April, May. But then kind of starting the third quarter, things really began to pick up. And I would say our third and fourth quarter finished as strong as any third and fourth quarter that we had. In fact, the fourth quarter was excellent. So in terms of market demand, what we saw, ironically enough, we saw increased demand for flex space that had been experiencing long-term vacancy. We did a 25,000 square foot lease that had been on the market for 15 years on flex units. So, and primarily it was medical related tenants that were coming in. So it's really neat to kind of see how they saw opportunity and value in some of those spaces. Of course, there was increased demand for warehouse space, but in Baton Rouge, look, we're really a stalemate when it comes to our industrial market. Some of the numbers, we got just over 31 million square feet of industrial space. 1.8 million square feet is vacant, so that's about a 5.8% vacancy rate. But if you back out the inventory that I would consider, kind of either functionally obsolete or trending towards functional obsolescence in terms of its condition, its quality, its site size, and even to some degree location where it doesn't set up well for logistics and access any longer. If you back out, really it's the Choctaw corridor, so kind of North Baton Rouge. That's 800,000 square feet of vacancy. You take that vacancy out, we're really at, I think, a functional vacancy rate around 2.5% to 3%. And there's not a lot of new construction. Like you don't have any, you don't have anyone doing spec builds right now on distribution. You don't have any, you've got a handful of 10 to 20,000 square foot office warehouse spec builds down in Geismar, but not a lot of those going on. So yeah, there's just not a lot of room for new tenants to move into the market. And really what we're seeing in the industrial sector is kind of a shuffling of tenants within the market. So, retail was tough. I don't do a ton of retail leasing. We did work with a handful of clients who had tenants that we did some different lease workouts. And for the most part, those are really successful. I think once they got kind of a runway, and really the key was to get them to January 1st of 2021. And so, to start paying rent again. And I think that's really worked out pretty well. But retail took it on the chin. Funny with office, we experienced one of the buildings we leased, we actually increased the occupancy during COVID, but it was with smaller tenants, shorter terms. It was the landlord willing to be flexible. I think that will continue to be a little bit of a trend with office. One of the things we saw too is that, and I have some concern about office occupancy long term, is I think the nonprofit world, I think a lot of those nonprofit tenants aren't going to come back to the office. I think it's going to take some time, if ever. I mean, I know you had some large nonprofits who said, we're going strictly to a work from home situation. Personally, I don't think that work. I think you can work in the nonprofit world. I did the work from home thing for a couple months during COVID. And I love my children. We actually got pregnant during COVID. So we had 3 and we ended up with 4 coming out of COVID. But it was just, you couldn't find a quiet space at times, and what's funny is you kind of move to the room where, it was quiet, they follow you around, so I just don't know if it works. So I think that's kind of what's going on with office. I will, what David talked about with land with residential, there has been just, if you have land right now that is not in flood, not wet, and in a growth corridor, I mean, it doesn't last long. And that's hard to find in Baton Rouge because all of our land that's left is wet, flood, hard to access. So, that's kind of where things are there. So I think that,
As a follow-up on the office space for me, y'all want to comment, are you hearing that tenants may want to, they're going to have to upgrade their technology systems within these and then move back in office space? Because Zoom's still going to be a platform or other platform that you're going to have to use if you have any discussion with tenants about having to spend some more money, or you as a owner having to spend more money to create more technology than ever one before today, being COVID hit and now we changed our times of the ways to work.
Yeah. We haven't dealt with that specifically with the tenant. I don't think Zoom's going away. I think it's interesting being on the board with CCIM. We used to always do conference calls. We never did Zoom. And now all we do is Zoom. So it's completely changed the way we do, and it's not COVID related because we never met in person, to begin with. So, I don't know if that's going to require more bandwidth. I know a lot of the buildings need a lot of buildings keep fiber as it is. I know Lighter and Blue, I think we just switched our IT, we got better speeds and a lower rate. So, but I don't know if that's,
I thought Carl sold the phone system.
But Lighter and Blue, we don't live there. So.
Actually, I'm thinking about whatever Chris and Scott, I don't know, maybe you all more on the landlord side, you're seeing, or your owners retrofitting buildings for touchless this or that, or UV or anything with HVAC, are they doing that?
There have been some requests for bathrooms to go touchless anytime there isn't touchless in bathrooms. As far as technology, no, not really. Most of the buildings already have fiber coming to them. Tenants can make do what we have in place.
Might be a good property management question. The only thing I'd say is just I think as buildings get built, you're going to see the press.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at the some of the technology with UV, some better filtration and all that stuff. It's, you know, a lot of it's just trying to dig through what's real, what's kind of snake oil, you know. So, you know, I think there's a lot of that going on more than anything else. I think as somebody pointed out, I mean, fiber is in the buildings already for the most part. When you're talking about Class A, B, there's some upgrades there, and we're doing a project with a Fortune 100 right now. And they probably have a stringent, but we're able to meet their capacity with what we have.
Chip, do you want to answer?
Sure, and ultimately what's happening in the larger metropolitan areas, you're talking about Chicago, New York, California areas, they are retrofitting their big buildings back with touchless items, including elevator systems, HVAC systems, bathrooms, as you indicated here earlier. So those are happening right now in the large metropolitan areas. In the secondary areas like Birmingham, it's not necessarily happening at this point in time. You're not seeing retrofits on the Class B properties or C properties. You're only seeing the retrofits on the Class A, and a lot of that has to do with return on investment, right? So your ROI. And for the older properties, it's harder to get that ROI. On the newer properties, you can go in and be able to push it. And you're also starting to see, especially in the larger metropolitan areas, sustainability issues that are coming forth as well that are coming in. So the green buildings and the LEED buildings are having a lot more retrofit happening right now. In the Class BC, it's just not happening. You're starting to see you did see during the COVID era, the touchless items where you could put the kick step in onto the door, maybe into the bathroom or going into the office space, or maybe people are handing out the little full deals for your office doors, but that's really about it on the retrofit on the PC.
One other comment, about office in Baton Rouge, but a trend that you're seeing, and I think this goes along with COVID, it was already happening, but I think you're seeing a migration out of the full service A and B buildings. Baton Rouge really is just a suburban market. And so the product type that they continue to build, they continue to lease, and at really good rates, is the garden office. I mean, up and down Jefferson Highway, up and down Blue Bonnet, I mean, anywhere there's a spot where you can infill and throw up 3 to 5 buildings that are 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, they're going to lease. And I think that's, you know, right, you don't have to do as much touchless because you're isolated, you're coming in to your suite, there's no elevator, there's no share. I mean, so it's, there's no common area restrooms. So I think that's a trend that was already in place. I expect when the trends data comes out next week with office, you're going to see vacancy increase overall in the market, but I think you're going to see actually the occupancy rate for the garden office product will either stay the same or increase. So, yeah, they're getting $22 to $24 a square foot, 200 plus, 210 plus a square foot for sale. So,
this is a kind of a growth question. Going forward, when you're trying to mentor or bring in new agents, has this whole situation, whether it's COVID or uncertainty of times that we may be in from a variety of areas, has your approach now changed in how you can mentor them, and also what do you tell them about the business now that you may have not said before, to try to be transparent to them, and what are they looking at moving forward and beyond what we've gone through in 21, 22, and 23 on someone new coming into the business?
You know, it was funny, that question was mentioned earlier about, you know, what do your agents do differently, or what did they do last year? You know, believe it or not, we found where a lot of our agents just took the time off and did things that they wanted to do and kind of went with the flow of the rest of the country. But then there were some of our agents, like myself, who buckled down and worked 10 times harder because I couldn't sit at home and wonder when it was going to lift and when we were going to be able to go back to work and when we were going to have checks coming in. I mean, as a 100% commissioned person, you know, I'm not paid unless I'm out there putting stuff together and closing, doing leases and closing sales. So my perspective was different from some of my agents in that they were like, well, I'm just going to ride this out and enjoy the time off. And for me, it was like, well, I'll take a couple of weeks, but then I'm back at it, working twice as hard. So yes, the approach we're going to take with new agents that we're bringing in, and we don't just take on any agents, but if somebody approaches us and wants to work with us, I mean, my mentality is, look, it's you that creates the opportunity. If you're not out there working hard to create the opportunity, it's not going to come. In fact, we had a few agents that went back into salaried positions because they couldn't handle the stress and the pressure of wondering when the next check was going to come.
I'll say ditto to that, and then I'll put Tim on the spot, because as a magnanimous president that he is, at the end of the meeting, he said, hey, let's open it up for new business, and what do you think, right? And I think the general sentiment that he feels, we see, you see, is people want to get back, right? I mean, they want to get back face to face, and for our world, it's, online education or live education, and I think the majority of us probably understand and agree with the virtues of being in a classroom and what that is, but I think, David, you hit on a root, which is, we're not an administrative business, right? I mean, our commodity is a tangible asset. The people on the other side of that transaction, there's a lot of interpretation in this transaction, especially on the commercial side. So, I mean, is it going to change in 2 years? And maybe I'm naive to say, no, it's not going to change at all. I mean, things are going to be different, but for the most part, I don't know how you're going to mentor new people without them being in your office. Somehow let's say touching, literally, figuratively touching them and getting them in the business and working that deal. I mean, I think from an academic standpoint of go get an MBA from Cornell, you're probably the smartest person in this room, but you don't really know the real estate transaction process until you get with a mentor and get out there and do it. So I just think it's going to come back.
Yeah, I mean, and so I used to help train some of our young agents at Ladder and Bloom. I think two of the biggest things with COVID that I learned that I think a new agent can take on. One, we saw a lot of agents kind of, David mentioned, go to salary jobs. It's just going to be a natural process. Some agents aren't going to be able to make it through this and they've gone on to other careers. But one, the way we use technology kind of had us prepared for that 2-month period in March, April, and into May. Where it was easy to transition, but more than that, it made us focus on our efficiency of process, and it made us focus on high probability deals. And with that, it actually led to, I think, more communication with clients. So there wasn't, I love the office setting, but the office can be extremely distracting when it's just pop in after pop in, and before you know it, you've eaten 90 minutes out of your day with conversations that you had no intention of having. It's great to have, but that is the one good thing when you're kind of isolated, in a room. It's funny, I say I always get my best work done in a hotel room when I'm traveling. Nobody can access me. I control who accesses me. And so, I think being able to focus on high probability deals and communication with clients really made, I think that's a lesson to take out of COVID that I would encourage new agents getting into the business. That's the type of stuff you need to focus on. So.
I'd say that two things kind of jumped out at me. One is that in retail, the really good operators, in order to survive, bricks and mortar people had to bring their A game. They had to up what they did in order to survive. And I think it's surprising the number of brokers who I talked to who had a good or their best year ever last year. I'm still just kind of surprised at the resiliency of somehow these people still went out and managed to make it all work. And so I agree. We are very much a people-oriented business. We cannot wait to get out there and touch and shake hands and let me show you this. Let me show you this face, please. But there is people figured out a way to make it work somehow. I think that's probably still getting out there with the tennis. But that's number one. People did figure it out. Second is a comment on retail. We have about 400 retail tenants in our portfolio, and we skew heavy towards mom and pops. We have very few big boxes in our portfolio. And in March and April and May, absolutely scared to death. I mean, I thought we were about to be run over by a Mack truck. We were on our knees begging to our lenders, oh, please, just give me anything. And fast forward 12 months later, we've had like 98, 97% AR collections. I mean, we were granted a bunch of deferments, and then they started to pay it back later on. But at the end of the day, out of our portfolio, we lost about 12 tenants, but we gained about 11 back. I mean, it makes no sense to me. But factually, and this is going to sound a little hokey, I mean, mom and pop's ability to persevere and survive, it is just downright encouraging. And these people had no plan B. And by gosh, they were going to make it through. Now I think 12 months later, they are tired. You know, they are so ready for so many things. But gosh, golly, when put to the test, they can flat out make it.
Yeah, and then on the property management side, you know, most of us are salaried in that sense, and some of us like myself are salaried and commission based on what we do when we deal with brokerage deals. You know, property managers over the last 12 to 18 months, they've been working 24/7. I mean, ultimately, we've been stretched thin. And trying to bring new people into this business has been a little bit difficult recently, and a lot of that has to do with the unemployment benefits that are out there. We're trying to get somebody in at an entry level. You know, we're having to get $15 to $18 an hour trying to pull somebody in, and competing with unemployment benefits has been very difficult. At one point in time, we're looking at $800 a week in Alabama for somebody on unemployment. Now it's down to $675, but it's still making it difficult. So trying to train those people who are wanting to be there, plus keep your people that are in place, who have been working 24/7 for almost 18 months at this point in time. You got to deal with burnout. You know, our property managers keep the glue together. They're the ones who are out there every day dealing with our tenants. They're the ones who are the face of your landlord, the face of your clients, dealing with your tenants and your residents. Dealing with this issue here. Now, you got to recognize that commercial and housing are intricately tied together, right? And those people that are in the housing that are doing these Zoom calls every day from the house have realized they don't have the right property. They're not living in the right property to be able to do that. As you talked about over here, Evan, you're trying to do it at home and you got 4 kids following you around to various different places. Well, let's say 3 and 1 4, right? So we're finding out that our multifamily residents are trying to move out and buying new homes or buying old homes, and your inventories are very tight on the residential side. Well, you're finding that your developers are now having to build your multifamily different so that you can have those silent places that have those Zoom calls, or what they call a phone closet. Well, it used to be the old phone closet in the attorneys' areas that you see now around the area. So that's having a shift, and that is all tied to the commercial side. And then you're seeing some office markets, for example, in California, where they're shrinking their size, but in New York and Chicago, they're doubling their size because they want to put more people into the office space when it becomes, quote, safe to come back, right? You got to recognize that Chicago is not quite safe to come back. In Alabama, we've been back for 8-9 months, right? So, you know, it's very interesting how where you're located has a huge impact on your mindset on how you dealt with COVID-19 and how you dealt with this pandemic. In Chicago, New York, California, the mindset was political. And that mindset was you stay home, you can't go out, you can't do anything. And that put a lot of pressure on the property managers, put a lot of pressure on the residents, put a lot of pressure on the office space, retail, everything else, restaurants. Alabama, we locked down for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, right? And our mindset was completely different. We go out there, we're safe, we go do what we feel like we need to do. Personal responsibility is a big part of that. I had a conversation with one of our staff partners in Chicago, and Richard, you're right. We opened our office. We were the first one in the NAR building to open our office. We had 4 people come in out of 68. Four people come in out of 68, and that's the mindset that it was in Chicago. Now we're up to 8 at this point. And we're having our first leadership team meeting in Chicago starting tomorrow. I fly from here and go to Chicago. We'll have 20 people in the office, and that's the most we've had in almost a year and a half. It's just a different mindset. So one of my staff partners, he's from New Orleans. His family's from New Orleans. He called me. He came down here for a month during the pandemic, and we were on a Zoom call talking about Japan and whatnot. We're going to go. And I said, Daniel, are you going to get your vaccine while you're down there? He goes, no, I can't get my vaccine. I said, why can't you get your vaccine? It's wide open. You qualify. You were in the qualification zone in New Orleans to get your vaccine. He goes, because it's not my time yet. I said, really? Seriously, Daniel, you got the Chicago mindset. Think about it. 2 days later, he calls me, hey, by the way, my mom found a shot at the CVS. I'm going to go get my vaccine. You're right, Chip. So it's a mindset issue. When you're going through this pandemic, it's a mindset issue. Down here in the South, and I'm going to be general in that, I'm going to generalize. In the South, we're open. We're open for business. We continue to do business. In other areas that are not, it's more of a scary place. They're trying to figure out their way to come out of this. So kudos to you here, especially in Louisiana, for coming out of this space that we've been in over the last 18 months. So thank you for doing that.
Great comments, great comment. Any follow-up or recap? I'm gonna let it go on as I go down one time if they'd like to say a few closing remarks on these things and check or something.
I don't know if y'all process, Richard made a comment about 10 or 15, 20% drop in office. You know, size, and I don't know if y'all process it the same way I do. Well, it's not in my building.
I'd just like to say that I'm sure it's great to see all of my friends that I haven't seen the last year and a half or however long it's been. I miss the interaction. I miss talking to people face to face. I don't like the Zoom. I think in our market, it's a little bit different from other markets in that we're having clients come into the office. We're sitting down around a table. We're talking about what their needs are and what they want to do. And it's nice. It's a good feeling. So I'm excited that we're finally kind of moving past what last year was. And so thank y'all for having me here today and allowing me to serve on this panel and give you some information about what's going on.
Thank you, David. Richard?
Yeah, just to your point, Chip, about the south and the north, whatever, the Whitney Bank here was pretty much on the front line of saying, hey, come back to the office. I don't know if any of you affiliated with what was One Shelf or anything, but they made a decision to go back early. It was interesting. I had lunch just this week with one of the senior VPs on the banking side and said, we were telling our tellers and our retail bankers to go back to work. How can we tell executives don't go back to work? So I thought that was an interesting standpoint. He said they were not the norm in the banking side in that regard. So I found that just interesting comment and just like you guys, I'm hoping that we will get back to some semblance of normalcy through the summer and definitely in the fall. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Heather?
Yeah, so one of the things I didn't get to touch on was kind of, property types that are selling are kind of most in demand right now. And I think what's interesting, one of the challenges we're having is just a lack of inventory. I mean, there is, I know it's been experienced on the residential side, but typically, Dex and I have anywhere from 75 to 85 listings. We just kind of worked through our inventory. We're below 50 listings now for the first time in probably 36 months. So, but I think what you're seeing is you've got buyers across the board, whether it's institutional capital, private equity from out of state, local buyers or small equity funds here locally. They're all chasing you. They're all trying to find you because interest rates have been so low for so long. And now all of a sudden there's all this, money that's being pumped in the form of stimulus. So I think you're going to continue to see that. One example of that was this distribution center in Lake Charles recently. JLL, we put in an offer on it. And, I think it's going to go for a sub 6% cap rate, which is just insane for a place like Lake Charles. Now it had 17 years of term left, but even so, it had some weird things with how the rent, the TI was amortized, all that stuff. They got 12 offers. They got 4 that were above 13 million. And so, just insane the way that money is chasing deals right now, to the point where, it's the reason why inventory is low is sellers are saying, or owners are saying, if I sell this, what am I going to replace it with? I don't have an option to roll my money into. And so it's just kind of, the process never starts. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. I have real concerns about inflation with the money that's being pumped in. I think rents are going to go up as a result. Construction costs are going up. All that's going up. Cap rates can continue to be compressed. All that's going to be real issues to watch going forward.
Thank you, guys. And I'm going to let Tim and Chip weigh in because from their perspective, when they sit, their organization as well as any other is going to be able to help tremendously about some things that are going on. But a new administration that's coming in, policies change, things change. I do want to make everyone aware in this room that we're going to need your help educating our congressmen as well, but all over the country. The 1031 exchange is in the crosshairs right now, considered to be maybe on the chopping block. So there's heavy discussion in DC about that. And in this infrastructure bill that's being proposed by the administration. There's also some capital gains increases in that legislation as well, as long as corporate income tax increases, which is not good for areas when corporations then look at other countries to move their business operations to. So I'm gonna maybe let them comment on that, because I know that the national realtors will be heavily engaged lobbying against those types of policies, and we're certainly gonna need your help here. 1031 exchange is an education issue, I think, more than it is a policy issue, because not many people understand the value of what it does and what it is. So
I don't know if y'all are, send money annually, make a donation to something called RPAC, which is the Realtor Political Action Committee. And I'm not big into that stuff, but I will give you a heartfelt sales pitch for that. When 3/16 happened, 3/14 March, wherever you were when your world stopped last March, March 16th was the day that my world changed. It stopped about 2 weeks. And I think all of us, we were all like the Tower of Terror at Disneyland. You're hanging on the railing, and this thing is just, it's freaking, you're just hanging on. You just got to wait and see where this thing lands. And while I was busy hanging on, screaming like a little baby, RPAC was on the hill. And this is because Greg Fine, the CEO of CCIM, was in the ear of the CEO of NAR, and they are the second largest lobbying firm on the hill behind the Chambers of Commerce. And they are a 98-pound gorilla when it comes to lobbying. And while I was screaming like a little baby, they were on the hill lobbying for the fact that rent had to be included in that first PPP. They were on the hill lobbying for real estate, and commercial real estate in particular. And so when the chips were down, they were there, and I gave it to them a little bit beforehand. I will give it to them every single year from now on. Just when it counted, they were there, RPAC.
Yeah, and Tim's right. Literally 2 days before the shutdown occurred, IRM and CCIM both were up on the hill. I was up on the hill personally as well, talking in regards to the 1031 exchange. Actually, at that point in time, we thought that we were protected on the 1031 exchange, and of course, the administration has moved into a new administration, and their situation's changed. They don't understand what the 1031 exchange does. They don't understand how corporate taxes being increased would impact your business. They don't understand the capital gains tax being increased and what that does to your business. And Tim's absolutely right. The Realtor Political Action Committee is there every single time to make sure that we're protected in our industry, both in the property management side as well as brokerage side. If you haven't participated in that, I would suggest that you do take a look at it and participate. It's one of those things where you get called in. For example, I'm a President Circle member, which is part of that Golden R range with presidents with the RPAC. But one of the opportunities I got to do was get to be on the phone call with the White House administration to talk about the CDC eviction and the impact it would have on our industry. Not only would it have an impact on the rental industry at that point in time, but also the homeowners industry as well, and then ultimately backed into the PPP loan on the commercial side to try to benefit our retail, our restaurants, and which we missed on that first shot, by the way. We didn't help the restaurants out until the second and third shot. But being part of that is what NAR does, and that's what we do as institute affiliates with NAR, both CCIM, IRM, RLI, SIOR as well. So please participate if you have the opportunity.
And I think, 1031 is on their radar.
And definitely.
That is a big thing to protect right now. So having their commitment behind that saves them.
Yeah, we're on the hill. We were on the hill today in regards to 1031 exchange. So we're trying hard to protect that right now.
Is capital gains still in the conversation?
Capital gains still in the conversation, increased capital
But
gains.
that's helping me sell some property, so I'm not complaining.
And the other one is carried interest. We don't know how that ends up.
What is happening with capital gains right now?
It looks like an increase of another 5% to it at this point in time. So that increase of 5% that's built into the administration's bill. I don't believe that the Senate will pass it, but of course the Senate's 50-50. And you never know what's going to happen. They have to have 60 to push it through to make a modification of capital gains, period interest, 1031 exchange, and the corporate tax rate. The problem is they're trying to do it through reconciliation again. And if they go through it through reconciliation, we're gonna have a problem.
And I don't want to beat this horse, because I know we've got some fun stuff going to happen tonight as well, but there's one more issue that's critically important. How many of, all of you in this room, how many of you independent contractors? Every one of them. There's a bill that passed the House, it's over in the Senate right now, that would basically get rid of the independent contractor status. And we don't think it's going to pass the Senate, but you never say never. And so that's another one that I just want to make you aware that is out there. So, and as they said, any others, it's on top of that at the national level as well as all the groups. And we're going to watch out for you here at the state level. As everyone knows, the state session is in until June, so we do the same thing on the state level as any other does on the national level. That's a big issue as well, the independent contractor status. And it passed the House of Representatives, which just is unbelievable to me.
You know, Amy's trying to give us the hook over here, but Chris is, I mean, he is just.
No, I was just gonna tell you real quick, CNBC is reporting today that the Biden administration is gonna see a rate, a capital gains rate, high as
43.4.
Yeah.
That's much higher than
Market dropped 300 points on that.
43.4, that's much higher than what.
That's for a million plus in income.
Wow.
Well, that'll affect you, Chris. So.
Great information, yeah, that's great. Not good information. Before we close out our panel, I'd like to ask Beth, Christina, and Bradley Cook with Sterling Properties just to come forward real quick and talk just a second about the Realtor Land Institute, because we have two great members.
Where's Woodrow? Come up here with me.
Is she sponsored?
We're gonna be really quick, and I brought some brochures, but for y'all, I've been with the RLI Institute for over 20-something